panel on Japan's nuclear crisis. Well, it doesn't say accident, but everybody knows that there was a big accident. What happened was there was an earthquake, big earthquake, there was a tsunami, and then nuclear accident. It was a terrible accident. Indeed, the Japanese people who suffered first. But in the meantime, the impact went to neighboring countries or as far as to the US and Europe. And we're sorry that we have caused such a trouble. But in the meantime, we are grateful to all the assistance and the encouragement we have received from Korea, China, the US, France, and other countries. I think you have many questions to ask. Why? What happened exactly? What is the current status? Why did it happen in the first place? What can be done in the future? What the people's reaction in Japan and also in foreign countries? So there are many questions. We have a very good panel of experts today. To my left, Dr. Masakatsu Ota is a senior and editorial writer at Kyodo News. He has especially studied nuclear policies, nuclear non-proliferation issues, and also the U.S.-Japan alliance aspects. So he is a good expert. We have Ms. Sharon Squassoni from the CSIS. She works on proliferation prevention program as a director and a senior fellow. She previously worked at the Carnegie Endowment, and also she worked for Congressional Research Service as well. So she is a U.S. expert on this question. And the particular reason why I asked her to be on the panel is that I understand that immediately after the accident, CSIS organized sort of emergency meeting in Washington on this question, and she helped organize that session. So I thought she must know many things. Mr. Nakagome Yoshihiro, a professor, is vice chairman, president of Japan Nuclear Energy Safety Organization, which is sort of a non-governmental organization, but that works on the nuclear safety program of the government. So they have been working very closely with the nuclear safety aspects. So he must know a lot of things. Dr. Suzuki Tatsujiro is a visiting professor at Tokyo University, but then appointed a member of the Atomic Energy Commission of Japan, and he is now a vice chairman of it. Indeed, the commission is the basic role is to promote the use of nuclear energy in Japan. So it would be very interesting to hear from him how the commission observed the entire accident and how the commission and he himself thinks about the future of nuclear energy in Japan. So first I wish to ask Dr. Suzuki to tell us what happened, what is the current status of the accident, and if he may, what went wrong, what caused the accident, and what can be done in the future, and what will be the future of the Japanese nuclear energy. So, Dr. Suzuki.
Thank you. As introduced by Mr. Abe, Ambassador Abe, Atomic Energy Commission is responsible for nuclear energy policy, but not the safety of the nuclear power plants. And we are actually out of the loop in response to this accident. But we, of course, we try to help to contain the accident. What happened, many of you have already probably known what happened in many aspects of the accident. But the biggest, of course, cause was the largest tsunami we ever had. And all power losses in all nuclear power plants, and all the efforts to recover the power was failed. For number one unit, it took 14 hours, and according to the calculation, it only took a couple of hours to expose the reactor core. So finally, what happened was hydrogen explosion, number one, and then number 3, number 2, and eventually also pool spent fuel storage in number 4. The current status, of course, the accident is not over yet, and we're still trying to cool down the reactor, which is getting better, of course, hopefully. But anything could happen. My concern is like aftershock. If something serious happened, the building number 4 is relatively fragile. And also, more than 100,000 tons of contaminated radioactive water is there. And like a typhoon or any natural big disaster can hit the Fukushima again, that could cause another radioactive discharge to the community. So we still have to deal with this for some time. The current plan is to contain everything in 6 months or to 9 months, but that could be probably optimistic. And so that's the current status. And the consequence of the accident is roughly, it's still level 7, it's pretty serious, but the quantity of radioactivity released is about 1/10 of Chernobyl, and also the contaminated area is also about 1/10. But still, some of the hotspot area is as highly radioactive as the case of Chernobyl accident. So it is serious. And in the next couple of months, we need to consider the welfare of the people who evacuated, forced to evacuate, and how to return. How can we let them return to the original area, which is very difficult because some of the area is still contaminated, highly radioactive, but people are getting frustrated because of they don't know how long they have to be evacuated. So those are the health and welfare of the public is the most important thing for the government to take care of. All right. So then why it happened? According to the report recently published by the government and also preliminary findings published by the IAEA have common conclusions. So I will just highlight some of those. There are 5 categories. One is prevention of the accident, whether we could have prevented, was the accident could be prevented. That's the first item. Second is after the accident, the management was adequate to contain the accident. And third is the regulation, whether the safety regulation was adequate enough to prevent the accident. The fourth is emergency response by the government, combination with the utility companies. And finally, so-called industrial safety culture, which is more daily-based efforts for the industry to improve the safety. And there are 28 items listed by the government. I don't want to go into detail, but some of the things is very important. One is, for instance, preventive measures against accident is that, for instance, tsunami. Both IAEA and the government, they underestimated the threat of tsunami. And for accident management, both government and the IAEA said it was not enough, and actually it was not legally required. So both IAEA and the government said it will better to make it a legal requirement to have accident management scheme. For safety regulations, also both IAEA and the government said that it has to be independent. So independent nature of the safety regulatory scheme is very important from now on. And emergency response by the government, although IAEA said evacuation practices was pretty good, they say it's pretty impressive. Still, the emergency response was not, in some cases, was not adequate. For instance, the information like speedy, or this is the information supposed to be helpful for managing the evacuation, was not released, and the public did not trust the government spokesperson anymore, that kind of things. So it's a communication and the responses by the government is also another important area to be improved. And fourth is the another emergency arrangement is like logistics. When the emergency power is needed, the utilities and the government could not cooperate well enough to deliver those equipments. And so those are the things that both the government and the IAEA recommended for the future. Okay, then the final point I'd like to make is the future of nuclear energy policy in Japan. Prime Minister Kan has already said that the existing energy policy has been scrapped, means that currently we are supposed to build 40 more new nuclear reactors by 2030, and the share of nuclear power should be supposed to increase from current 30% to 50%, but that will be probably scrapped. And he said 4 pillars in the new energy policy. The first is nuclear energy with the highest safety standard. So it means that he will still thinks that the nuclear power is a part of energy mix. Second is efficient use of fossil fuel. The third is expansion of renewable energy. The fourth is efficiency improvement in household and the commercial sectors, which is not so efficient compared with the industry sector. So those are the 4 core pillars the Prime Minister Kan said, but the public still don't trust the government and the nuclear energy policy. According to the latest public opinion poll, actually just released yesterday by Asahi Shimbun, 47% of the public say we have to reduce dependency on nuclear power. If you include we should phase out immediately the nuclear power, it goes much higher than 50%. It will grow to 65%. This is the highest number I've seen. The public do not want to increase nuclear power or reduce nuclear power. So it will be a hard time for the government to regain the trust. So this will affect the existing nuclear power plants operation. Because we have currently 54 nuclear power plants. Out of 54, only 19 are operating. And if the government, if the public don't trust the government, the reactor will be shutting down in the next couple of months for the maintenance. It will not be able to restart. Then by the end of probably next year, all nuclear power plants cannot operate. So this is going to be a serious energy problem in the future, in the short term. So regaining public trust in the short term is a very important task for the government. I will stop here.
Thank you very much. Then I will ask Dr. Sharon Scorsoni, but before doing so, let me tell you one thing. I'm virtually only one who is not wearing necktie today. Tell you the story. As a consequence of the Fukushima accident, the TEPCO, the operator of power stations, lost roughly a quarter of power generating capacity. Therefore, they have called for saving electricity. The government has now advising everybody not to wear tie and coat so that they can raise the room temperature. I know that Korea is not suffering, and therefore they have good air conditioning. But to go out without tie is so comfortable. So I'm keeping it that way. So Sharon has done that work. So I wish to hear from her. What was the reaction in the United States? What did they think of the implication for nuclear power policy in the United States? What is the popular reaction? And in fact, they did very good help of the Japanese emergency operations. So I may ask you to touch upon that aspect as well. So please.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Abe. I just wanted to briefly say the event that we held at CSIS was on, I think it was April 1st, looking at the domestic implications of Fukushima, but also the international implications for nuclear safety. I am not a nuclear safety expert, but what I do is watch closely, or have watched closely, the media, the political, the government, public, and industry, especially industry reactions to this crisis. And I'll offer a few sort of opening remarks and then talk a little bit more about the specifics. You know, Fukushima is the first nuclear crisis in the 24/7 news cycle. And the media coverage reminded me somewhat of 9/11, sort of a horrified fascination with every detail, whether it was correct or incorrect, that emanated not just from Japan and abroad. And crises generate unrealistic expectations about what is known and what can be done. And in some ways, the media magnifies those gaps between expectations and reality. They create strange expectations. And I felt as though part of my job in Washington, D.C. was kind of tamping down some of the wilder theses out there. In the U.S., luckily, I say luckily, the crisis in Libya diverted attention from Fukushima as the top story, which gave a lot of us a rest. And the reason why I said luckily is because not all the coverage was helpful. And I'm hoping that you'll talk specifically about the coverage in Japan. From a political perspective, you know, when I look at politics in the U.S., I look at several different groups, right? So first of all, President Obama got right out there and reiterated his support for nuclear power. We heard a lot from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission saying our reactors are safe. Well, why does this matter? Well, because we have 23 of these GE boiling water reactors. And one of the first calls that I got from GE was, it was a phone call saying, and what are people saying? The quid pro quo was that they were quite helpful with some technical details about the reactors. But what President Obama did say was that, our reactors are safe, but when we see a crisis like the one in Japan, we have a responsibility to learn from the event and to draw from those lessons. And the United States is in the process of doing that. So that's the executive branch, and I'll talk a little bit more about the NRC in a minute. Congress was definitely very interested in this, held multiple hearings, and even within the first few weeks introduced a few bills. Some of these, the testimonies in Congress related to a wide variety of issues: earthquake and flood resistance, station blackout, clearly the biggest problem. Spent fuel pools, what radius should we distribute potassium iodide pills, ocean contamination, MOX fuel, international nuclear safety. The list is very long. And several of the bills, there were at least 3 bills that were introduced, one by Ed Markey, one by Senator Kaka, and actually that was on international nuclear safety, both in the House and the Senate. And then Nita Lowey introduced a Nuclear Power Licensing Reform Act where, among other things, she suggested that when we renew the licenses for existing power plants, that they should be held to the same standards as new power plants. Ed Markey's bill actually had some very quite specific things, which is move spent fuel to dry casks as soon as you possibly can. You have to make sure that you have primary power, that you can endure a loss of primary power from the grid for 14 days, that you have 72 hours of backup power, things like that. So, this is just to show you that Congress is deeply interested in this. And I participated in a session with 20 members of Congress in Vienna where we specifically, this was for an entire week, and we talked about nuclear energy and nonproliferation and all the rest. And what I gathered was a frustration about the level of international cooperation. And also an expectation that, well, gee, this accident happened. Why didn't more people fly in immediately? Why wasn't the IAEA doing mandatory safety inspections? Strangely enough, there was little questioning about how the United States would react to those kinds of mandatory inspections or international assistance. And you think back to 3 Mile Island, exactly how welcoming would we have been to international intervention. On April 1st, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission announced a task force. They were going to conduct a 90-day review. And so this is an initial review, and this particular task force will then, after 90 days, figure out what a longer-term review will look like. It is an NRC task force, and that was one of the criticisms that people have said, or at least in the NGO community. They've said, well, why not make it a broader commission? Why leave it to, this is like not exactly the fox guarding the chicken house, but, if you're going to review yourself, maybe you should have a little outside assistance. Anyway, that task force released initial results on May 12th, and there'll be some public briefings in June and July 19th. They've looked at several things. One is, how do you respond to external events like earthquakes, flooding, fires? Are you prepared for station blackouts? What are your severe accident measures? And some of the things that were adopted after 9/11 to ensure security. Emergency preparedness, those kinds of things. There are probably some shortcomings with that process, and we'll learn as we go along. But I would say for the first time in as many years as I've been watching these issues, we're starting to see some criticism of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's independence from the nuclear industry. And those are in major New York Times, Wall Street Journal. So it should be interesting to see where that follows. And lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the industry reactions. Obviously, a lot of support for the Japanese operators, a lot of equipment support to the mitigation effort. The industry, by and large, has been cautious about the implications. Of course, they're telling Congress and the press lots of reassurance about the safety of U.S. Nuclear power plants, and that they learn from their mistakes. Safety is number one. All the things you would expect the industry to say. Specifically, they have been doing walkthroughs, verifying plant capabilities to manage major challenges. How do you deal with total loss of offsite power, those kinds of things. As you may or may not know, nuclear power pretty much in the United States has been in trouble for a while, even since the start of the nuclear renaissance. And even though we have seen some criticism or some laying responsibility at the feet of Fukushima, like the South Texas project, canceled. TEPCO had been involved in that. This is not about Fukushima. The U.S. nuclear industry needs quite a bit of financial assistance, including a carbon tax, and that just hasn't happened. So when you have, for example, the CEO of Exelon, John Rowe, state several days after the crisis, we will no longer, we're not going to build nuclear power plants, we're going to build natural gas plants. That's not about Fukushima. That is really about the cost of nuclear power in the United States. So I'll leave my remarks there.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, I wish to ask Dr. Ota to give us his perspective. He is indeed working in media headquarters, so he must have seen the Japanese public reaction and also the issues involved in reporting such a huge accident. The problem is it's so radioactive, reporters can't get close to the site. So what they get perhaps is all indirect information. So could you tell us all the
Sure.
troubles and
Okay,
issues?
thank you very much, Ambassador Abe. I feel a little bit strange to be called doctor by Ambassador Abe, and because I'm a laid-back, no-tie journalist in Tokyo. So anyway, thank you very much for having me here. I was very moved to hear the comment by Prime Minister Lee yesterday during the plenary session. You know, we Japanese, we call our nation only state to survive the ABAM attack. Yes, of course, we are the only state, only country to be attacked by nuclear weapons. But we are not only the only national, only citizen who are attacked by nuclear weapons. Many Korean people, it's a huge number, very huge number. 1/10 of the entire casualty is Korean residents in Japan. They are forced to come to Hiroshima and Nagasaki for forced labor during the imperial time of Japanese army. So always I came here hearing such a comment, make me feel so humble. So I just would like to say thank you, and I would like to express my deep appreciation to Asan Institute to give us such a great chance to discuss about the future role of nuclear weapons and the future security of the nuclear issue. And also we have to enhance the bilateral cooperation between South Korea and Japan for our common goal, nuclear-free world. I went to Fukushima first time, I have to admit, just last week, because our media competition in Tokyo was so intense, so competitive. I'm not a nuclear physicist. I'm not a nuclear reactor specialist, but I got a PhD on my study on the nuclear history between U.S. and Japan. I got a big prize for my 10-year investigation on nuclear secret deal between U.S. and Japan. My story triggered the investigation by DPJ government last year. I'm not bragging. I just want to make an excuse. I'm not a nuclear reactor expert. But I went to Fukushima, and I went to the southern part of Fukushima. It's just a southern area of Fukushima Daiichi reactor. I went to a city called Iwaki, and I just hired a taxi car, and I just went up to the north as much as I can. I went there. I saw the whole destruction inside the Iwaki city. Still destruction. No recovery process yet. You can see many buildings are just destroyed. And I interviewed the local people. They say that, many general constructor who has to destroy the whole building and scrap and build a new house, they are so afraid to come to Fukushima. So first priority is recovering the Sendai, Upper North Prefecture, and also Iwate. So I couldn't see I could see just a little indication of starting a recovery. So this is the still. Maybe this is the rumor and some side effect of the nuclear disaster. The general constructors and somebody who has to work for recovery are so concerned about their radioactive effect to their body. And so it's pretty natural, response for human being. But we have to we have to change this situation in order to bring about the earlier reconstruction and recovery in the region. Let me go to a little bit historical perspective of Japanese nuclear history. As I said, we got the Hiroshima, Nagasaki, ABAM attack. And then we had a three times nuclear incident that took place in March 1st, 1954. There was a huge explosion, thermonuclear weapons by United States. the 10 times of the destruction yield of Hiroshima. And the Japanese fishermen, they suffer plenty of the ash of death. This is a very shocking event for Japanese people. They came back to the Tokyo port, and one fisherman dead, and it's a kind of a panic and a shocking event for entire Japanese. Since then, our anti-nuclear policy has been strengthened gradually. And also, it's very interesting. At the same time, simultaneously, behind the scene, U.S. authority and small number of Japanese politicians, they discussed about the introduction of a nuclear peaceful power to Japanese country. I just want to quote very interesting, I have some data here. Even some U.S. congressmen tried to introduce the legislation to create the first nuclear reactor in Hiroshima. With suggestion from Atomic Energy Commissioner Thomas Murray, Democrat Congressman Sidney Yates, I think he's from Illinois, introduced a legislation to build 60,000 kilowatt plant in Hiroshima. That would, I quote, makes atom an instrument for kilowatts rather than killing, unquote. So we got the bikini nuclear testing, ash of death, and Japanese government sought the compensation from United States. But just only a limited number of money was paid to Japanese government. Instead of that, nuclear cooperation between U.S. and Japan has been initiated and enhanced since then. So that means the nuclear export to Japan has some character of a compensation for nuclear testing, which caused the third time suffering of nuclear weapons. So this is the very dark side of the history. And also Japan, as you know, we have been relying on the nuclear deterrence. This policy was built in, I think, in late 1960s. Conservative Prime Minister Sato, he made a pledge. 3 non-nuclear principles. We are not going to possess nuclear weapons. We are not going to create nuclear weapons. We are not going to allow anybody to bring nuclear weapons on our territory. So even though he insisted on the 3 non-nuclear principle, he made also another policy, the relying on nuclear deterrence provided by U.S. and maintaining the 3 non-nuclear principle, and also nuclear policy, nuclear peaceful use would be a national policy of the Japanese government, Japanese country that has scarce, very limited resource of a natural resource. So this is the historical background. Now I want to go to some opinion poll suggested by Dr. Suzuki, but I have my own data, Kyodo News. We had some poll conducted on March 27th. It's almost 15 days after the incident. The people who say reducing the number of nuclear power plants, number is 39.5%. And the people who suppose the immediate elimination of a nuclear power plant, 7.2%. Maintaining a status quo, 40%. Increasing the number of nuclear power plant, 6.5%. So still, 46.7 people are against the nuclear. They don't want to see any increase of the nuclear power plant in Japan. 46, still less than majority. And also other 46.5 people said, we want to maintain the nuclear option in the future. But our recent poll, May 14th and the 15th, you can find some change of the number. Somebody who said we have to reduce the number of nuclear power plant, 47%. 7.5 up. And the immediate elimination of a nuclear power plant, 6%, almost the same number. And the maintaining the status quo, 38.5. So now Korea majority is moving against the nuclear peaceful use in Japan. What happened? Why people's mind are little bit change? My journalistic analysis is because of delaying operation, delaying a process of containing the whole situation in Fukushima. I'd like to touch on some initial mishandling of the crisis management by government of Japan and the TEPCO. I think these factors will be a main reason why people are getting more against the nuclear. First, Mr. Kam, Prime Minister, he has announcement to resign sometimes in the near future. He went to the site right after the next day. Incident happened, and he made a decision to go to the site next day. It must be a big distraction for the people on the ground. I have no intention to criticize the government from here, from this podium. I just wanna exceed some useful lesson for the future. Prime Minister is the commander-in-chief of this crisis moment. And he took away from the Prime Minister's office, and he went to the site. One senior official of TEPCO clearly told me during my interview that it's a serious distraction for entire operation on the ground. Also, even senior close aide to Prime Minister said the same thing to me. It's a kind of the off-the-record comment, so it's not Mr. Yamaguchi. He's a senior official of Japanese government, but he's not my source anyway. So anyway, there is some mistrust towards the government, even among the top level of the government, and also a utility company, senior level. So this is one indication of the mishandling of the crisis. And also, I'd like to emphasize the big problem. There is no clear command and control to mobilize necessary resources, including a specialized human power. Nuclear Safety Commission, they have an advisory group consisting of 45 specialists in nuclear field. Nobody went to the place. Nobody went to the site. Even Prime Minister went to the site next day. Nobody went to the site until April 18th. It's a big surprise. I wrote a story. Nobody went there. What happened to a nuclear safety agency and advisory board? Next day, they made an announcement. We will send the people right away. So this is another mishandling of the containment process. So all these mishandling, failure, deficit, creating a huge frustration and a dissatisfaction among the Japanese public and also media. Also, we media have to be criticized. For a long time, we have missed a chance to inspect and check how safe our nuclear plant is, how trustful our nuclear regulatory system is. That's our mistake. We have learned a lot from Mr. Martin Fakra. Great story from New York Times. So I'm sorry, it's my laid-back talking, and don't give me a hard question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ota. Last, I wish to call upon Professor Nakagome, who is Vice Chairman of the Nuclear Safety Organization, but also he, as a professor at Kyoto University, he has specialized on nuclear security aspect, and he is one of the few who specialize on this question. And as my impression is that Japan is still lagging in efforts to think about the threat of nuclear terrorism and take steps against it. So please, Professor Nakagome.
Thank you, Ambassador Abe. And also thank you, kind introduction for me. My name is Yoshihiro Nakagome, Professor Emeritus of Kyoto University, Japan, as Ambassador Abe said, and Vice President of Japan Nuclear Energy Safety Organization JNES, which is one of the technical support organizations for the Japanese government, NISA. And I retired from Kyoto University 4 years ago. I was engaged on the nuclear material management at the Research Reactor Institute of Kyoto University more than 35 years. As you know, the northern Japan was attacked by a very strong earthquake on March 11, 2011. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was also damaged by tsunami and nuclear accidents were occurred. The Fukushima NPP accident gave good and valuable information to nuclear terrorists who have intention to attack NPP sites. But now in Japan, almost public people and news media people and even nuclear scholars are evaluating such accidents as defects of safety and accident management systems. In this panel session, I would like to present my opinion concerning on the nuclear security sense in Japan and the necessity of mutual security understanding in Asian countries. In my opinion, one of the reasons why we cannot accept the Fukushima accident as a security viewpoint is that there is no difference between safety and security in Japan. As far as I know, current Japanese have no security sense. That is to say, the Japanese safety concept includes automatically the security one. For instance, after use of dangerous goods, radioactive material, etc., we set back them again to the same locked box. Usually these dangerous goods are stored in a locked box for safety. For Japanese, the purpose of the locking is to avoid the misuse of them on a safety viewpoint, not a security viewpoint. This manner is natural in Japan. In our childhood, our parents taught us as a morale, don't steal others. This is social rule. Everybody knows thief is bad, but we have to know that the person who has stolen is worse. I think this is in the international sense. In my opinion, the Japanese common sense is not common sense in the world. And unfortunately, right now, I have to understand that Japanese common sense is ideal. Several years ago, I asked the difference between nuclear safety and nuclear security to some Western friends because I didn't know the difference. And I have found out that in the foreign countries, United States, foreign countries means United States or European countries, they have a very obvious difference between safety and security concept. In the IAEA, I hear the relationship between nuclear safety and nuclear security and also nuclear safeguards is now discussing as a 3S, as a synergy of 3S. Since the 3S tasks are dealt simultaneously in the IAEA to proceed peaceful use of nuclear energy and radioactive materials in the world. I understand the necessity of a 3S concept for peaceful use of nuclear energy. However, we never forget that the safety and security issues have quite different meanings. For example, a window lattice. This is very important equipment for preventing thieves, but this lattice is an obstacle on safety viewpoint. In case of inside disaster, the lattice prohibits to run away through the window. We cannot answer whether lattice is good or bad. In 2008, July, on the Toyako Summit in Japan, the former Japanese Prime Minister, Mr. Fukuda, stated that a 3S combination concept should be considered when Japan develops the nuclear market to the world. The actual nuclear security implies an armed guarded security. In Japan, everybody spends his life without any arms. Accordingly, it might be very hard for almost Japanese to have any confidence to talk about armed guarded security. Recently, I heard from my Chinese friend that there is no obvious difference between general safety and general security in China. But he said there is a quite clear difference between nuclear safety and nuclear security because the word of nuclear is newly appeared in the Chinese culture. Since in ancient time, the Japanese culture was imported from China through the Korean Peninsula, I have regarded that China, Korea, and Japan has the same safety security concept. Furthermore, I have found out that there is a big difference between Chinese concept and Japanese concept concerning safety and security. In China, general safety is automatically included into general security. This is quite opposite from the Japanese sense on safety and safety-security relationship. I am personally surprised as a member of same culture people, since I don't recognize such difference. I guess China is a weapon country, or Chinese continental people, and so on. But I don't know the truth. On the other hand, I don't know whether a difference between general or nuclear security and nuclear safety and nuclear security is in Korea or not. I am very happy to teach me that. When we continue nuclear development in Asia, I understand we cannot forget the nuclear security issue. In order to spread peaceful use of nuclear energy, at least in Asia, we need a mutual understanding on nuclear security by considering differences of each culture among countries. For establishing the mutual understanding, I think education is most important. That is to say, the development of human resources is needed. We have to learn what the effective nuclear security is. After the Fukushima accident, a more strong mutual understanding of nuclear security among especially China, Korea, and Japan is expecting for our nuclear future. We need a mutual reliance. This is my opinion and my presentation. I apologize for my overtime presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nakagome. And now I wish to open the floor for questions and answers. We have a little less than half an hour, so please raise your hand and please identify yourself first.
Thank you. BK Kim from KAIST. First, Yokoshiro-san, you just mentioned the three countries, yeah? Japan, China, Korea. That's our. When you say our future, automatically means those are big three countries in Asia with lots of nuclear power. And I cannot fail to recognize the absence of Chinese in this plenum. Yeah, I don't see anybody here from China. Okay, so maybe some wish we had more, and to share our feelings and apprehension over these issues here. Now, we witnessed three major nuclear crises in history so far, and each time we learned the very valuable lessons, and with a specific follow-up action items. I'm sure same thing will happen with Fukushima also. But in the case of TMI, INPO was created in the USA. Yeah, and in the case of Chernobyl, WANO was created. Yeah, as a non-governmental standing permanent organization to promote interface and the sharing information and so on. Now, my question to all Japanese colleagues is, do you see the similar thing could happen out of Fukushima to come up with a standing permanent nuclear non-governmental organizations, especially among the three, China, Japan, Korea? What do you think?
Perhaps we should start from Professor Suzuki. By the way, he is working also, he has been a member of the Fissile Material Working Group, which is a non-governmental group working on non-proliferation question.
I hope so. I hope that, as I said, the safety culture is an important part of the recommendation made by both IAEA and the government. And that should be established not just by the regulators, but also by the industry itself. And so non-governmental initiative to enhance safety culture is probably very important. We do have already similar organization like INPO called Japan Association of Nuclear Technology Institute, JANTI. But it has to be improved probably. And also, but my feeling is about this, by the way, this I'm talking personal opinion, not governmental opinion. This has to be probably a more international arrangement. We have to create some kind of particularly emergency response. We don't have any collaboration within East Asia for emergency response. And that would be probably a good idea to discuss how we're going to coordinate in the future.
Nakagome, do you have any idea?
And in my opinion, okay, United States, there are three kind of the safety, security, 3S concept in the world. One of three is United States, and the second is European countries, and the third one is Asian countries. Asian means very wide. So I have many kind of we have many kind of culture in Asian countries, but especially China and Korea and Japan is almost the same. I understand. We have the same culture, so they at least in order to develop the nuclear market in the Asian countries. So the big three and China, at least the Far East culture, Far East countries, China, Korea, and Japan. So we need the united culture, safety and security culture. I need. I'd like to establish Far East culture, Far Eastern Asian security culture. You understand? It's very difficult to.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I couldn't answer I'm sorry, I couldn't answer the hypothetical question because I'm not specialized on the nuclear reactor and the safety. But just one proposal. Maybe we can set up the trilateral safety kind of enhancing committee or something. Maybe based on what happened on Fukushima, we can run the same lesson and we can share the same lesson. and we can pursue the more enhanced measurement to realize the safety of nuclear power. If Japan still want to go for the nuclear power plant policy. That's my answer.
Thank you. Next over there, please.
Thank you. My name is Chung Min Lee. Hi, Susan, from Yonsei University in Seoul. My question is to Dr. Ota from Kyodo News. I understand all the problems that Prime Minister Kan Naoto has in the polls and elsewhere, but I think it's very unfair for the Japanese public to criticize him for visiting the site the day after it occurred or a few days after it occurred, because you would expect any national leader to go there and visit the site to give at least moral support. And to criticize him, I think, is very, very mistaken. Nonetheless, but I think the key problem is this was a structural crisis failure. This was a failure because of the tyranny of manual management. I think the Japanese government, maybe even perhaps the Korean government, you have this fixation with manuals and protocols. And this defied all types of protocols. And so my question to you is, rather than criticizing your prime minister for the wrong reason, what were the real reasons for the structural failure of crisis management in Japan? And is there a way out of this? Because the ongoing commission is going to publish an interim report in June. 3-4 months after the biggest accident in Japanese history. The full report will come out, as I understand, by the end of this year, 8 months after this crisis. And so I'm just wondering what's really happening in terms of crisis management in your government, although you're not a government official. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much for your very sincere and forthcoming question to me. Thank you very much. I totally agree with you. In one sense, we are not criticizing the government for the sake of the criticizing. I'm not criticizing the Prime Minister's visit to the site itself. He should have done additional and extra measure at the time of the crisis. I think initial 24 hours, 48 hours, most crucial moment for the entire consequence of the situation. He couldn't mobilize the intellectual capability, specialized people, country's knowledge about the rescuing the situation. That's my criticism. He should have made a more critical decision at the Prime Minister's office. If he should have done so at the site, Fukushima, no criticism. But there is no kind of a crisis management structure established at the initial stage. That's my main point of criticism. Is that okay for you, sir? Also.
Okay, Sharon, on this point?
Yeah, could I add something? Maybe not so much on the structural crisis, but I think we need to reevaluate how we do probabilistic risk analysis. A friend of mine from Princeton wrote an article that's called Beyond the Imagination, and it was about how not just plant operators, but regulators also make these analyses, these assessments. And one of the key points about looking at the intersection of nuclear safety and nuclear security is, in nuclear safety, you're looking at, separate risks, whereas a nuclear terrorist is going to put all of them together to make the biggest problem that he or she can. And so I think you need to look from top to bottom, whether it's organization or how you perform those risk assessments. One of the criticisms of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's review was that, and initially the instruction went out and said, don't look at anything beyond design basis threat. Kind of missed the point there, So they went back and revised it. So there's a host of things that we can look at, not just in Japan.
Okay. Professor Yamaguchi is one of the advisors to the Prime Minister. I understand on the emergency disaster operation or something.
Thank you very much. I was mobilized by the Prime Minister's office on the 20th of March, 1 week after the disaster. And I was I was supposed to help the cabinet in terms of crisis management, and I found out, reason why crisis management with Khan administration didn't look extremely good was the crisis was so difficult. Triple crisis came at the same time, and in addition, from my point of view, personal point of view, not many people have been talking about this, but this is a damage on the information and the communication infrastructure, including those for the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear reactors. So lack of information from the suffering area are the key during the first phase of disaster. Not only the nuclear reactor, but the Tohoku area as a whole. So we had hard time to recover the communication information infrastructure. Of course, we utilized military assets, but the area close to Fukushima Daiichi was supposed to be out of the people are not supposed to go into that area. So when we asked NTT or communication companies, they were very much hesitant. Not because they are feared, they got feared, but rather the system, regulation-wise, they were not supposed to go into. So it took some time to let them go and with proper protection and to re-establish the communication information structure. It took quite a long time. And please understand that at the beginning, shortage of information is always existing. And we have to live with that. But in this era of communication and information technology, we must have take more consideration on how to fix it. We might have done a better job if we were very much more concerned about information and in communication infrastructure to deal with crisis. That is one of the most severe lessons learned. I could have done a better job in this context as well. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Corey Hinderstein with the Nuclear Threat Initiative. I have a question for Tatsu and a question for Professor Nakagome. For Tatsu, one of the interesting occurrences around this crisis is that for those of us from a distance that were really paying attention and trying to get good information out, for the first week at least, if not longer, the absolute best, most timely information was coming from you on Facebook. And I find this very interesting that for as much as there were, and then later TEPCO started releasing daily updates, FEPC daily updates. There was a lot coming out, but it was much more, medical, rather than actually giving a sense of what was happening and where the concern was and what might the next thing be that we're worried about. So I'm wondering if you've taken any lessons from crisis communication, from the role that you played in helping those of us on the outside understand, and not just what has happened today, but what is the next thing we need to be paying close attention to. And for Professor Nakagome, you mentioned the lack of understanding in Japan about increase of security and armed security in particular. And I'm just wondering if there has been any reevaluation in your mind on the security side, in addition to the safety side as a result of this, that maybe the way that Japan has done it all along needs to be reassessed. And I understand your point that it needs to be integrated, safety and security, but in that integration, we also don't want to lose the lessons learned possibly about security as well as safety. Thank you.
Related to the question, in a way, WikiLeaks helped provide information to Japan. During the crisis period, there was a report about WikiLeaks, which leaked cable sent from American Embassy in Tokyo back to Washington, which said the American officials advised the Japanese side that they should take terrorist threats more serious and, for example, deploy armed guards around the nuclear facilities or check the security clearance of the people working at the nuclear sites. So that appeared in the Japanese newspapers. So in a way, that helped alert Japanese people of the need. Well, having said that, Professor Suzuki, please.
Okay. What I did was not, of course, part of the government operation. I just did it for myself. And actually, I was not a good user of Facebook. So, well, it just happened that I was at home, and I didn't have much information to me also. So what I did was just to keep my memory. I just recently bought iPad, so it was just I just casually started keeping the record, and I then got the responses from Pugwash people to continue, and I didn't realize that was useful because what I did is just basically simply translate the information from the government and also the press. So it was basically factual based and no interpretation much, although of course it's a personal note, so I wrote down some of the assessment. But so the one big issue was there was little information in English, probably. So even a couple of sentences in Facebook could be very important, could be very useful. And another important thing is that if I was in the office, I cannot do Facebook. And I have to go through the office computer, then Facebook is not usable. So it's funny thing that the official information flow is less, how can I say, useful in terms of the quickness, but of course their information is probably much more accurate. But what I said at the end, by learning all these things, at the diet session I was asked regarding the information disclosure about the accident, that the speed and the accuracy is a trade-off. And when case of accident, a crisis situation, probably speed is more important than the accuracy. You can correct the information later. And of course, if it's a Facebook or WikiLeaks or Twitter, anybody else can fix it if I'm wrong. Actually, what happened was if I wrote something wrong, somebody put on something that I'm wrong. So that was faster, actually, than the government internally discussed and then published it. So that was probably one of the reasons that Speedy was not published sooner. They wanted to make sure that was correct, and that was not useful eventually. So.
Do you have anything to add? No?
That's the end.
No? Okay. There are two questions. You're the number 3. Okay, please have quick questions, and we go all together. Trevor Findlay first.
Thanks, Ambassador Abe. Trevor Findlay from Carleton University. One of the accusations made about the Japanese regulatory system in the Fukushima context is that it was experiencing regulatory capture, that is, the regulator getting too close to industry. And the argument is made that it's very difficult to get around this in Japan because the nuclear community is so small. So where else are you going to get nuclear experts but from the industry, and that there will always be movement between the industry and the regulator. Other countries do this somewhat differently. The head of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is an IT expert who knew nothing about nuclear before he came into the position. So I'm wondering, is this a way for Japan to proceed? Just to have very intelligent, knowledgeable people who know a bad regulation when they see one, as members of the regulatory body, supported by nuclear experts, obviously, but you don't have to people it with entire range of nuclear people. They can be other experts as well. But also other things that Japan can do in way of increasing regulatory independence. Thanks.
Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is He Yun from Tsinghua University. I just have one quick comment about Professor Nagakomi's idea of creating an East Asian culture that integrates security and safety. I think this is a terrific idea because what happened in Japan could well happen in China. It is to my knowledge that the generator of our Qingshan and Daya-1 nuclear reactors were on the sea level as well. So if the tsunami hit my country, it would have the same thing would have happened. Somehow, with this issue, there's not much dialogue between China and Japan and South Korea, but there's plenty of dialogue between China and the United States because most of our reactors are imported from the United States. So I think there is a real necessity for such kind of dialogue between the three countries, and there is opportunity too because at the moment China is establishing a center for excellence, nuclear excellence, and I think Tokyo is trying to establish such a center too. So instead of establishing separate centers, maybe we can just establish one regional center that can invite nuclear experts and young scholars from different countries to come and discuss and learn such issues. Thank you.
Okay, Martin, you're the last one.
Martin Fackler with the New York Times. The issue of public opinion came up in two different presentations. I think it's an important one in Japan. After Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, Japan was one of the only countries that proceeded with building nuclear plants at a time when many other countries had a nuclear allergy. And public opinion probably was part of that, or a lack of public resistance was probably one element of that. And I wonder where you think public opinion in Japan will go, and what is the impact on public opinion? Thank you.
Okay, quick answers from Professor Suzuki first.
For the last one?
No, three of them. Three of them.
Well, I forgot the first one. I think the regional center, is probably a good idea. We have similar already collaboration, but institutionalizing is probably useful. And public opinion, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but in Japan, local governor, prefectural governor has a strong opinion, strong power. So the public opinion eventually influence the local governor. So then see what happens. But that's probably very important to see how local governor will behave.
Professor Nakagome?
Yeah. I just presented the difference between safety and security. So I don't know the exact after Fukushima accident.
Sorry, I have to respond to the first one.
Yes.
First one. Okay.
Safety,
okay.
Your comment on the safety regulatory capture.
Okay.
Yeah, no, please.
Okay, all right. I just want to very quickly. In terms of number of people, experts, we have enough people, but it's not divided into NISA and the Nuclear Safety Agency. So we have to combine. One way to do it. The other is the Japanese bureaucracy. The people will change jobs in 2 years. That is a problem. So if we want to create the expertise, real expertise in the Nuclear Safety Regulatory Agency, we have to change the rule. That's my opinion.
Professor Nakagome, you have something
yes.
else? No? Okay.
I agree with you.
You agree? Okay.
I just want to respond.
Do you have anything?
Oh,
I do, actually, and
Yes.
it ties together the questions about crisis communication, regulatory capture, and public opinion. I, too, found my best information on Facebook, but I don't know whether it's because, and I think the key there is trust. You trust the information. I mean, I've talked to people at TEPCO, JIF, and what we learned from 3 Mile Island was that in a crisis, whether it's in a crisis or regular or in a normal everyday, when it comes to nuclear issues, you can't be too technical. You have to admit when you don't know something, And, yes, if you have a strong regulatory agency and good relations, that helps, but it also helps to see who that face of authority is. And we had a problem. We didn't know whether we should trust the plant operator, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, President Carter, So I think you actually you can't wait until the crisis to decide those things.
Okay, you have the last
I
word.
just want to make a brief comment to Martin-san's questions. I just went to Fukushima, and I went to within the 30 kilometers from the reactor. I have talked to one single old guy whose house destroyed and who's now evacuated to the Saitama prefecture. He was born there, 86 years old. House was built almost 150 years ago, and he lost everything. He lost his memory, his place, property, and he's now evacuated. He's 86 years old, so he has to face the end of his life, maybe different place from where he lived and where he was given birth. We have a culture, strong adherence to the land. We have to protect our land from the ancestor to the next generation. It's a kind of a good old obligation of the traditional Japanese culture. Fukushima destroyed all of that. So now people who have just the neighboring the area of the nuclear power plant, not in my backyard issue would come up on the public opinion. This public opinion is just a general one, So 50%, 60% doesn't represent the strong opposition, strong feeling, regarding the not in my backyard issue. That's my comment.
Okay, time is up, and I have to close the panel. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you, everyone. We will now have a quick coffee break out at the hall. The next session 7 will begin in 15 minutes with the topic of prospects for 2012 Nuclear Security Summit. Thank you.